Tere tulemast kuulama! Tänane debatt on siis...
Welcome everyone. Today's debate is meant for the students of Tallinn University. And we will be telling you or talking about the topics that are the most important for the students. You can watch the web stream over Zoom, and you can also submit questions. We will select the best questions and they will be answered by the debaters. In addition, we also have a web stream over Facebook and YouTube and in Delphi and the Postimees dailies. My name is Johanna Viik, and my main role here at the university is to be a student. But my second role is to head the student union. So that means that my role here today is to talk about the topics that are the most important for our students, honestly and frankly. And with me today in the studio are the people who are vying for the leadership of Tallinn University next May. These people are Katrin Niklas, the current Vice Rector for Research, and the previous head of the Humanities Institute. Right now he is a distinguished professor of philosophy, Tõnu Viik. And hereby I would like to put up a disclaimer. We do have the same last name, but we are not related. Before we go to today's debate, I would like to remind everybody that the candidates' visions are also on the website of Tallinn University, where we have a special section for the rector's election. And it also tells you a little bit about what the election is like, the process, what their views are, which they will also be talking about today. But it also has more information about how after today you can find out more about the candidates. So today's debate is the big grand opening, so to speak, but we will have two shows, Expert Eetris, Expert on the Line, and then two more debates. And for students, if we can't get to all your questions today, we will collect them, and in January we will come back to them. In addition, I would like to also address all students at Tallinn University. Right now, we are also looking for people who will be in the council who selects the rector. The fifth of those who select him or her come from among the students. So if you go to esindus.ee, then it also has more information about how you can be one of the electors. But without further ado, let's get started. You have been connected to Tallinn University for quite a long time, and it's been a while since you've been a student. So I thought I might get you closer to that role at first. So first, we asked some questions about the preferences from students in Instagram. And my question to you here is, what do you think? What do students prefer? What were their answers to the following questions? And the first question is, which cafe do students prefer, the Astrarium or Oaz? Oaz. Astrarium. Well, let's see which one they preferred. We will see the answer up on the screen shortly, I believe. But I will give you a hint. Katrin got it right. Our Instagram followers do prefer Oaz. 70 said they prefer Oaz, and 36 said Astrarium. Next question. I understand because of some technical issues, we won't see it on screen. I will just go ahead and ask it. What do you think? Which place is better for studying? Is it the Astra Study Center or the Rävala Puiestee Library? Which one is better? I think students will say Astra. I do agree with that as well. Which one would you prefer? I like Rävala more personally. I also think that if you need to focus and get away from the hustle and the bustle, if I were writing a thesis, I would go to Rävala. I have to admit that yes, students do prefer Astra. It's conveniently located with 83% for it, and then 17% said Revala. Next question. Which do students prefer, virtual lessons or lessons on location? Well, from my experiences, students prefer coming here. Despite the coronavirus situation, we have been able to hold classes here. And as much as I have asked, they have strongly preferred it. Content-wise, on location, but in practical terms, virtually. Just as I do, I also like on-site learning more, but on the practical side, the virtual learning is also very convenient, especially if it's only just a lecture. So you see what the percentages were for that question. Last question, what do you think? Which is preferable to students, writing a bachelor's thesis or doing an exam? Well, that's a tough one. My students have said they like both more. I would say exam. I will answer it from my point of view as a student. I would say the thesis. Here, Tõnu was right. More students prefer exams, but I do also have to admit that I prefer exams. So the life of students is different than that of Vice Rector for Research or a professor. Our daily life is quite interesting, but Katrin, you have been Vice Rector for Research since 2011, and you have worked with the professors and researchers. So how well do you think you are up to date with the concerns of students? Well, in the rectorate, we've had a very tight team, so we've discussed all the concerns together, so I don't feel that I am left out of the university students' concerns. So we also have work that we do with the students, research projects. We also have a best practices working group. So we have quite a few instances where I have contact with students. Tõnu, how about you? You have been very active in the Humanities Institute, but how well do you think you know the concerns of students all over the rest of the university? When I was the director of TÜHi, we worked very closely with the student representatives there. We even conducted a qualitative study of amongst our students. So that was very informative. But of course, yes, it was only the students of our institute. But now that I'm teaching again, then my students they also come from other institutes. So I hear a bit from them about what's going on in the rest of the university. And also, of course, online, I've been keeping an eye on what you are doing with the student union. So my question is, what do you think? What are the things that the students are most concerned about? What are the most important things for students? Katrin, what do you think? Well, we can't get around the current situation where students have to work. So on the one hand, of course, free higher education is only half of the equation. Today's student also wants certain conditions for their life, and that makes them struggle on many fronts. And I also think that this newer study environment that is more focused on the learner, that's something that students hope for, and they expect that to happen faster than it's happening right now. And of course, there are the daily smaller concerns that are more numerous. What would you add? I think the biggest concern for students today is exactly the same as I had when I was a student, how to study. I didn't actually know how to study. I had a hard time managing my time, managing my own activities in that process. So to a large extent, my university experience was kind of like a glimpse into a rich world from which I took away only a small part, unfortunately. And students with whom I speak also describe their experience the same way. We do have a lot of good professors, so it's not a question of enthusiasm, but that next step is missing. So what do I do with that inspiration? Yes, it's very exciting, but when I got to the next seminar, then I didn't have enough time to prepare because I was working, I was doing this and that. So I had that problem as well. So knowing how to study, the skill of studying. In your vision, Katrin, you mentioned independent study and talked about that very in detail. So your vision is that the students are smart and self-directing, self-sufficient. But what do you think? What do you mean by that? We have to realize that when we're talking about self-learning, self-didactics, we are talking about that from the very first years in school when we look at the overall education strategy. So this inner motivation is key. It's not about just learning for a diploma. It's a considered type of learning. It has to have a supportive environment. And this environment is not just about fact-based knowledge, but also about competence. It's also about understanding and knowing how to implement what you learn. And the environment has to support that. And of course, the self-regulation issue also comes with that. It's not about thinking that I'm an independent student and everything comes in and of it all by itself. You need to solve abstract analytical tasks that also develops that critical thinking skill, which is very high in demand in today's labor market. But as a rector, how can you support that? If you end up being elected rector, what can the university do to support that? Well, the university can do a lot step by step. So in that sense, these are all intertwined topics. When we look at the new principles as a basis, you can read them all you want, but we have this knowledge-based creativity is one principle. Second is supportive of the learner's autonomy in cooperation. Well, the university can go step by step and create better conditions for implementing those principles. And we do have to strive towards that. That also means changing the physical environment of the university. From the students' letter, I read that the professors in the lecture hall, that's something that we have to turn around. The professors in a discussion, professors in seminars, professors in real life situations. Of course, master classes are very important. We will continue to have them, but we have to have less big lecture halls, but more small gathering places where we can have open discussions. I think this takes us a little bit towards Tõnu's vision and the community, the sense of community that he talks about. Do you agree? But what do you think about what the university can do to support the students more in their self-learning? Well, when it comes to self-management, teaching that, it's paradoxical because as soon as somebody comes from the outside and makes you do something, then you haven't been self-managing, have you? So knowing how to self-manage that requires self-management. But self-management in studying at the university, it's no different than doing the same thing in your private life or at work. It's that same skill to manage yourself and what you have to do. And when you think about it in a learning context, you can break it down into more digestible pieces, more manageable parts that you can do. We can very well use group work where people make each other do that. I have one example. We were doing something abstract, seemingly. We are reading Plato's Phaedrus. But as soon as we started to do kind of a radio play about it, then that required group work. People had to come together. So that does motivate you to approach abstract subjects differently. But there's nothing from the outside that can come and do it for you. The student, him or herself, has to. We have to give the opportunity more and more and motivate the student. But of course, it is a journey of self-discovery and self-finding. I understand that you might not have concrete ideas, but I've realized that in some specialties, there's a very strong sense of community. And in other specializations, it's lacking. Sometimes you do have a course that comes together and forms a group and learns together, studies together, and it's very helpful. But I know that that's something I missed because I actually got to know my course mates better about 4 months into the studies. So perhaps the university could also support that side more. What do you think about that? Katrin, perhaps you could answer. Have you seen the kinds of courses where you don't have a sense of community? Well, sure, it's getting more and more complicated because compared to our ancient times when we were students, Kolkhoz times, but these gatherings, they're less and less. Instead, you have people coming in and then running off to do second, third, and fourth things. A very concrete idea I have is that you can come together with a group. You have the curator of the curriculum. We can support them, but more widely among the students in order to have more resource to deal with that. I do have one specific idea that I am happy to spearhead as a rector, or even not as a spearhead as a rector. Our alumni are very much included and very much in the picture. And I think they are a great resource. I am a Tallinn University alum as well. So a campaign for inclusion and also for donations to support events for students. That would be a very concrete measure. That's a great idea. That should be done. I do agree about the alumni. They are an underused resource in the university. It seems to me that the alum wants to be connected to that university after the studies are over as well. If we talk about the University of Tartu or Taltech, well, there's the Tartu spirit that you have, and then Taltech, there's a Tipikas, there's a sense of pride. Duno, in your vision, you have talked a lot about academic spirit and the sense of belonging. So as a rector, what would you do to make students want to be a part of the Tallinn University spirit? When it comes to that sense of community and being part of the Tallinn University community, Indeed, we are faced with the problems that the student wants to study and work at the same time. And of course, that puts a certain strain on them. And students a few decades ago did not have the same problems. Of course, life was quite poor and quite simple. People lived in dormitories, several people to a room, but that also meant that we had a very good school of social skills. On the other hand, the problems that we see today, I think they start with the question of do I sense that society supports the university? Is it loved? Is it supported? Oftentimes, or sometimes we might be in a situation where students are even a bit embarrassed because others, there are very strong message carriers who have damaged their identity. It creates a certain field of tension, which is politically charged by other parties from the outside. So that's one aspect. But as in response, the students' experience here, if they have been inspired, if they have gotten an education here that has actually helped them move forward in life, if they have had that co-learning and community experience here, and most importantly, if they have been considered a colleague in this house, I'm sure they will want to come and they will be proud to say, I am Tallinn University. I am very proud to say that I am Tallinn University. People who actually sense it, perceive it, and are very proud of being a part of Tallinn University. It's a tenth of us. It's our foreign students, our international students. And Tõnu, you haven't mentioned our international community in your vision. Why is that? I don't know why I didn't put that down. Of course, it's self-evident that the university has its international dimension, both in terms of the staff and the students. I think it's natural that the academic community is multilingual. So the debate about whether university studies should be Estonian or English, I think it looks past actually the crux of the problem. In today's globalizing world, there are no other ways to be academics or students, even if you don't know how to read or express your ideas in at least 2 languages. But I think for European youth, it is not abnormal to express themselves in 3 or 4 languages. So to me, it just seems so self-evident, too self-evident to write down. Okay, that's understandable. But looking at the past year or the past few years, Katrin, you have been a member of a rectorate when from the state side, we had a few signals that international students are not welcome, whether it's on a legislative level or on a rhetoric level. And during the Corona measures, we had international students who lost their income because they worked in the fields that unfortunately were the most hit during the COVID situation. They couldn't contact their close ones very well. And in the end, we had a situation in the summer where actually we had promised to accept about 200 students who we could not admit then. What do you think? How did the university manage all that so far? I don't think that Tallinn University is alone in this. The Rector's Council just came out as a united front and issued a statement. They have been very bold in expressing their ideas that in principle say that everybody is welcome and universities do not accept these ideas. Of course, so we do not make political decisions for the state, but at the negotiation table, the compromises that we've had to make are actually quite small. Indeed, there are some, but as we know, in a democratic society, the art of compromise is what takes us forward. So from the side of Tallinn University, in my opinion, I don't think there's anything to regret, but there's a lot to learn in the sense that we didn't know anything about COVID. We know much more now. And in the new legislative context, I don't see any obstacles to the next admissions rounds that we will have. Everybody who has met the requirements also from third countries, we will be able to accept them and we will accept them. Tõnu, did you see the university make mistakes that you would not have made as a rector? I believe that I'm not enough versed in the details to answer that. But there's one more thing that the university can do. That's explain more boldly, more bravely, these questions and problems to the wider society when it comes to the rights of international students to meet their families, to bring their families. Right now in Parliament, we have a draft law being discussed about not supporting them. So these are deeply ethical questions. And in regulating these questions as a society, I think we should act smarter. The university's role is to bring out these ethical topics and also behave as an open European institution. But how would you do that? Yes, I do agree. As a rector, you can say something, but does a rector's voice carry far enough? And how could the university increase the trust and confidence of international students? Well, I suppose the rector's task would be to find political allies. I think one of the widest platforms that I hope will work is the Rectors Council. Katrin already mentioned it. And they have also voiced their opinion. And next, what we can do is turn to the wider public and also towards the political parties. Do you agree with no? Yes, I certainly do. Here we have to have a strong backbone. We have to be advocates. We have to be advocates for an open and tolerant society. Here, I might add that if you put yourself in the shoes of these international students who were here during the COVID crisis, what do you think? Could our university support these students more? Are there some mechanisms that the university could add? Or is it basically up to them to manage? Katrin, what do you think? Well, even now, it's international students are not left to their own devices. At the university, we have a lot of central support measures, and there are units that help them, support them. I agree that across different curricula, the level can vary, and the university has to make efforts so that the level of care is more homogeneous. Oftentimes you have to think about the resources because creating support, offering support also means resources. So some priorities might have to be reconfigured. Resources are not infinite, but of course the university can also find more resources. So, of course, it is the university's role to support international students in every way they can. Sometimes it's not about the resources though, but we just need more empathy, more attention. And indeed, thanks to this COVID situation, our international students have been left alone even more than they were before, because our students, they are at home, and the international students are perhaps the only ones left in the dormitory. So we don't know, we haven't had very good ideas on how to compensate that. So the community that we would like each majority or each speciality to have, I think that's more fractured than before. I do agree, and I think something that's been done very well in the University of Tartu since the Vice Rector for Research, Aune Valk, talked about it. It was very concrete and it was very well put. So the students there felt that the university was behind them. And if I feel that the university is behind me, I trust it, and I feel that I want to study there. And I think that's a very good example of how to actually get it done. Okay, but let's move on to the next topic. Tõnu, you already mentioned the Estonian language versus English language, and it has been a question among our students as well. We have a lot of new English language curricula and courses. What do you think about that? You already did mention it a bit. It's not a problem in your opinion. So are the students saying that it's a problem? Yes, we've had questions of, yes, I came to learn on an Estonian language curriculum, but there are English language courses. Well, I would encourage them to see it as an opportunity to learn that piece of that specialty in English and perfect their language skills. I think this language immersion might be more beneficial than some of the bits of knowledge they glean in the world that we are living right now. To think that I will only be speaking in Estonian in whatever specialty I acquire, or that my work will never require having to explain them in a different language, that likelihood is decreasing very fast. So in any case, we have to work with several languages. So I think that learning languages is an important and necessary part of any studies at the university. I wanted to add that, of course, I agree. And I also have developed from the same place. But finding the balance between the Estonian language and non-Estonian language courses, there's also the second part of the university's mission is to keep Estonian language alive and keep it as a research language, as a scientific language. In the changing environment that we are in, I think there are new possibilities. When we think about the fact that these materials are available in both languages, so this one course is not in one language all the way through. If it's in both languages, then the videos or whatever written materials can also be produced in Estonian alongside. And of course, group work in either language. Oh, one more example, just what we were talking about, the course about Plato's Phaedrus. When I prepare it and when I'm reading the text, we look at the Marju Lepaja's version of the translation. When I read it in English or Russian or German, when I'm reading the same text excerpts, I have different connections, and in any case, it's a very enriching experience. And as Katrin said about the Estonian learning, the Estonian side can't be lost. I have to know how to talk about all that in English as well, or in Estonian rather. That's how we maintain and develop our language. Or perhaps another example, to doctoral students, I have recommended to say what the point of their thesis is in a different language. And you see how thinking in a different language brings up different connections in what you're trying to say. It kind of shifts some aspects of what you're doing. So if you take two languages and put them together, then you can only widen your horizon. You have a stereoscopic view. Okay, let's change topics again. One topic that has really spoken to the students or touched the students. And we can see that the students here are very worried about its environmental sustainability and sustainability at large. From this year, I think we can clearly see the activities that are meant for reducing our footprint. But at the same time, what we still can't do is sort waste properly. We still have single-use cups. We still have a lot of paper being used. Coming to the university from the dorm with a bike is insanely complicated. And I would also say that for students, it's complicated to carry out that sense of responsibility that they have in front of for the environment. Katrin, as a rector, what would you do to make our university an actually sustainable one? Well, we're doing this and that. In January, we are going to have a vice rector for sustainability. For years, we have been thinking about it, and it is very justified. The criticism that you're talking about, the elementary things have kind of lagged. But I think it was either today or yesterday that we had a systematic blog post from the vice rector for sustainability. And there we have information about some of the elementary things being solved through procurements and so on. So when you get started, there are some rules to the process that need to be followed, but I do think that we have to be more ambitious. So these small things we will fix quickly, but the bigger things when it comes to sustainable development, because that also includes well-being and issues more than just the green issues. So how do we integrate, how do we direct our academic competences and use it for the benefit of the new society? Where are the resources for collaborations with other partners? So how can we, on a wider base, contribute towards the development of that idea? And in our studies, how do we deal with it on a running basis? We do have an action plan. We need to break it down into manageable parts. And here I would actually like to issue a call to action that I propose, that we make it a best practice. We make a best practice agreement. We've had some agreements before. Some are 13 pages, some are 3 pages. My proposal is, let's make this agreement at the grassroots level, and let's make a 3-point agreement. First main point, let's agree that each one of us will systematically do a practice something that's sustainable. Second point is we agree to come together as a community and we will communicate about it. And the third is we will listen to other communities and be inspired. Tõnu, what would you do? I think the levels that Katrin talked about, yes, indeed, they apply. We have the daily level. We are kind of behind on that. I think our awareness is ahead of the opportunities that the university is offering, and that's good. And that means we just have to catch up. But in addition, we have to work in an evidence-based way to be an example to others with the daily practices and with the overall thinking too. So we don't want to be just another institute. We want to be the spearheads for a smart life. We want to develop these practices that others will take over. Of course, it's complicated to do if we don't have the practical issues worked out. One more question to both of you. In your rectorate, would there still be a sustainability vice rector or not? Tõnu? I have not put together a rectorate first yet, because it can only be solved in a complex way. But at the rectorate level, it has to be represented, whether it's through a vice rector or not. I have already said yes, and I have also said at on previous occasions that we just started with this position, so it's no use changing it very quickly. We have talked a lot about the learning environment, and the sustainable development is a very important part of it. We can't live up to the goals if we don't have the basic issues worked out. So when we talk about the environmental friendliness, the things that I pointed out, these have to be done. However, if you were a rector, what would be the 3 things that as a rector you would definitely do in order for all students to be able to focus on self-actualization, self-development, what they came here for? So it can be wider than the sustainability topic we talked about. What would those 3 things be? What would you do? I think it would be a good way to sum up. First, the learning environment and its smooth evolution, constantly changing it, making it better. And the key word that I would like to point out in this context is feedback and bilateral feedback, and what we actually do with the feedback. So usually we think about professors giving students considered feedback, and based on that, the student should be able to form their understanding and construct their knowledge. But we also ask students for their feedback in many forms, but we still have quite a way to go. There are some teachers and professors who take it very seriously. They ask for more and they ask for feedback on a running basis as well. But the university could do more in this. And as I mentioned, when it comes to sustainable development, let's start at the grassroots level and let's put it to all our members, to students first and foremost, to get things done. And that's how we can actually get it going without any orders and regulations. I understand the question was that how can students self-actualize in the university? Well, they need the type of education that meets their expectations and in best case succeeds it. So that presumes we will be solving the question of individual and flexible learning pathways. We will have to solve the question of how, in addition to knowledge on a specific specialty, we also, how we manage to teach self-management and social skills, how well we are going to take the digital leap that will make our learning richer instead of poorer, and how do we make sure that the student is a participant in university spirit? How do they get that feeling that they want to come back and study more, learn more? Katrin, would you like to ask or add anything? There's one thing I would like to add. The us feeling, that school spirit that comes, it starts with those people who are here, starting with the rector. If we are positive, if we are optimistic, and if we are fans of the university, which I do see, our tradition has, I see how our tradition has developed, and we are a cool university. The tradition doesn't have to mean being boring or traditional. With students, we have found the solutions to create that sense of us, and I think having clear traditions of our own, developing them, and also making them available in digital channels. We have tried everything for that in this COVID period, and I think we can manage, even though we had doubts at first. Well, yes, indeed, we did manage right now. Our learning processes didn't fall apart, but how do we use the digital platforms and e-learning means to enrich our situation, make it better? Well, in a learning quality sense, I do agree that we do have more efforts to make, but I was more talking about traditions or celebrations or ceremonies. For example, today's debate is doing fine without a large auditorium, but first it was weird to talk just to a camera, but Johanna is smiling, and then we'll find out how many listeners there were. Before I go to the questions, just an idea, something to think about before the elections. You've talked about learning qualities and about learning processes, but a practical topic at the university is actually mental health and mental health concerns. The queues for the university psychologists are several weeks. And during these times, because of the COVID virus, we need more of them. So that's just an idea I wanted to get across. But let's take some questions from the viewers briefly. What are you most proud about in the university? Katrin already partly answered that, so I would like to ask you to know. I'm proudest of the people, of us. We have a lot of very good people here at the university, strong professionals. And all these people together as a team, in my vision, I explain it, but I will say it here as well, that I'll explain it here, that we have a low hierarchy. We are very cooperative. We need more caring. We need more empathy. But I think we are better than average. So that's how come we know how to want more. We've seen that it works, and we see that that's the direction we want to go. Okay, next question. How big of a problem in your assessment is sexual harassment and misconduct at the university, and what are steps to prevent it? I think the best practice is Council, you've talked about this. Yes, we are sending a general framework to the University Senate. Attitudes are on all ends of the spectrum. We all know these codexes. Some say, who needs another paper? But even one case is one too many. So putting these issues on the table and talking about them, saying, yes, it happens here as well, although we have not had, luckily, any major public cases. But the borders that people have, they run along different lines. So that is a point where we need to discuss it. We have seen occasions, luckily, outside of the university where different parties perceive things differently. So we need to have these discussions so that we would have an agreement on what is okay and what is not. And we need to keep the discussion calm and reasonable. The gender-based and sexual discrimination is a study that was cited in the media from Tallinn University. It is, I don't remember the numbers, but it is a present problem. We can't say that there are no cases, but we can presume that in a hidden form, we do have those problems still. So that's something we do have to look at. The situation needs to be improved. And we can do that by talking about them to people. We first have to admit that, yes, it's a problem. Second, we have to talk about how to notice it. And then third, what to do about the cases. I know we have talked about having the university ombudsman so that there would be a safe place to turn to in case of need. In your rectorate, would an ombudsman be a position that would exist for that purpose? In the proposal on Monday, they will go to the Senate. We have an equal treatment commissioner, and we discussed at length about what to call that position. It might seem unimportant, but actually it is important. When people are looking for you, then they are looking based on keywords, and they might not find them. So ombudsman was foreign to us, and so the commissioner for equal treatment sounded better. When it comes to the psychologists, we are actually widening that circle. Because depending on where a person works, they might have a different person they feel better talking to. They might depend on gender, age, anything. I think that type of position has to be there, and it's good that it's been proposed. So in a while, we can take a look at how well that role was carried out. There's a question from the public. Free or paid higher education? What is your opinion? Free education is certainly better than paid education. I think we took a long positive leap when we did away with the distinguishing between state paid and state not paid positions among students. We have not been at the same time compensated for this difference in income. So we are actually talking about the problem because we are looking for added resources. So it seems that putting a fee on studying could be a simple way to generate income for the university, but it comes with dangers. When we look at the practices of countries where education is not free, for example, in the UK, at the beginning it had quite a modest, or rather modest fee. It was a small part of education. I think it was about £1,000 a year. And I don't know how many years it's been, perhaps about 15, and it's tenfold. So if we open the door to paid education, we call it a symbolic fee and a partial fee. There's a big danger that we are going in a direction where students have to pay for their whole education, and that means no equal access to higher education, which we do not want. What do you think? Well, I can only agree. The fact that we apply a wider principle than is provided for in law, I think it evidences it. I think what is in law right now is reasonable. I do support it, but it does not mean that the university should be thinking about including private money as well, whether it is from students or from companies. The newer thinking is that for many students, a 3-year or a 5-year program is actually not what they want. And what they want is like these education bites, basically. And if you do it in a smart way, it can perhaps give you the whole curriculum, not in 3 years, but perhaps in 5 years. So this flexibility and customizability, those are important. So we have to think about where those resources would come from. Well, for full-time students, we would like to keep it free. Now we have to have quick answers, so we have very little time left. What to do so that the university has stronger ties to businesses, so the businesses would know that the university is trying to solve their problem. Katrin, you already mentioned businesses. Well, we have taken steps. We have the XU platform, which aims at strategic partners and finding them. So we have made a lot of efforts towards that. We have negotiations underway today, but with students, the ELO projects that we have talked about a lot, this is an instance where we see these solutions at work. Well, you can't develop cooperation with the private sector unless you create knowledge here that contributes and is valuable to the businesses. So how do we get there is, of course, in cooperation with the businesses. So it's inconceivable that without any previous context, we will come up with something that will perfectly fit the needs of a company. So, okay, we are running out of time. It has been very exciting and interesting to listen to you both. I hope it has been interesting and exciting for you as well. To all the listeners, in the end, I would like to remind you that at the university website, at the Rector's elections section, you can read more about the candidates. And we certainly didn't cover all the topics that are interesting to the students. And knowing the university very well, I know that over the next debates, these questions will be answered. And dear students who are listening right now, I do remind you that you can be a candidate for the Rector's Election Committee. Thank you very much, Katrin and Tõnu, for taking the time tonight and discussing these issues with us. And I think the rest of the process will be very interesting and we will hear about very interesting thoughts. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening and thank you for your great questions. Have a wonderful evening.